Do you think the Chinese authorities fulfilled their human rights obligations?
No, categorically no. I think that window of opportunity, whilst not closed yet, is certainly diminishing for them to really to make a change. The people, I think there's been an epiphany to have this many visitors and this much interaction with the outside world. And I think it's going to be, for that reason alone, going to be great for change there. But the authorities have almost disregarded, I think.
On a personal level, did you feel you were at risk while you were in China?
I was very concerned about this before I arrived. However, when I first arrived, my passage through the airport in Beijing was quicker than it's ever been in any airport anywhere in the world. Literally 20 seconds. Showed my accreditation, showed my passport through, no problems. I was very surprised. However, the controls, I think, when I got to my hotel, that was when it was unusual how it was separated from everywhere. Even getting guests in required 48 hours of advance notice.
I mean, did you feel like you were being watched then and monitored?
I definitely was being watched. I saw the same people 3 or 4 times. I only left the hotel, the Olympic complex, maybe 3 times. And I saw the same people 3 times when I went to bars. It was very nice and people were very pleasant. The people who I saw continually, I kind of did that kind of, really? Little wave, nod, no problems. But it was just strange to be kind of under scrutiny, or at least feel like I was under scrutiny.
Were there any points you felt like you could have made a one-man protest or perhaps raised some other issues?
I think we have to evolve past the point of martyrdom, and I felt that if I'd have done more, if I'd have run onto the court, with a Free Tibet sign or something, whilst in that moment it might have felt really liberating and brilliant, I'm not sure how useful it would have been. And also it certainly would have put me out of commission. I would have been on the next, we saw quite clearly when there were protests, you were on the next plane home, if you weren't detained. So I felt like doing it this way was the only way, talking to the media every chance that I got to. There were a few stories, luckily. I think generally the amount of interest in using the Olympic Games, holding China to their pledges, was minimal. I know that people keep on saying that it was explored, it was talked about. I think it was absolutely minimal.
The other thing is, we didn't see any kind of protests that were happening. Why do you think that was? I mean, either from civilians or sports people?
I know why. Well, I spoke to a number of Chinese folk who were not in any way militant, but they were certainly fully aware of what was going on with the protests, and both from some reporters that I spoke to within the media centre, it was very clear that it was almost impossible to get hold of a pass to protest. It was almost impossible. There was at least one very widely publicised woman who applied 5 times, got rejected, and then finally got deported out of Beijing. It's absurd. What a perfect system you have. If you tell people they're allowed to protest, and then when they do, you deny their petitions, but then also you've got all their details, and if they're too persistent, then they disappear. It's awful.
We had a lot of reports coming back about problems for you with access to the internet. How easy was it for you to use the internet? Were you aware of anything being censored or anything like that at all?
There was access to the internet. Amnesty, you could access Amnesty, and I think it was almost as if they freed up that one site to show how great it was. But then I have a list of blogs that I read almost every day, and you couldn't access them. Things as benign as Huffington Post, couldn't get it. I was really surprised when my blog, in fact, I had no problems uploading or reading my blog at all.
What happened on the basketball websites that's coming back from the American basketball team? Is there anything you'd want to add that's not already being on the blogs and stuff?
Not really. I mean, I think that I was shocked and annoyed actually in one of the vlogs, as I called them, the video blogs that I did. I spoke candidly about how I was irritated that the American newspapers pick up a story about how Kobe might feel slightly insulted because I felt that he was slightly insulting to me. And yet they weren't picking up anything when I was reeling off stats about disappeared people, people in work camps. It was absurd. I think that was it condensed into a nutshell of the problem with the Olympics. Desperate for a story totally ignoring the story that was staring them in the face. Yeah, okay, so some of the basketball team said some not so nice things through a pane of glass on a bus to me. Sure. But that's a tiny, and it was a tiny blog too, for a tiny story in the scheme of hundreds of thousands, millions of people, billions of people being in peril. It was absurd to me. Absurd.
Did you have a chance to meet any ordinary Chinese people, any ordinary Chinese civilians?
I absolutely thought that if London can make the same kind of impression as the people, if the people of London can make the same impression as the people of Beijing did, we'll sail through the Olympics, regardless if our fireworks aren't big enough or not. Because it was so obvious. They'd spent, I don't know how much time, but a lot of time learning specific phrases so that they could interact with you. It's like this opportunity to interact was fleeting, and they wanted to maximize it. They were, I mean, yes, I was still definitely seen as a bit unusual wandering around, but people were so lovely, it was great.
A lot of people look back on it and would say that it's been a great PR coup for China, the whole Olympic Games. Would you say that was the case, or do you have any disagreements with that?
I was initially worried, and perhaps I shouldn't have been, I was initially worried that this Games would be this PR whitewash for them, and that everybody would flock to Beijing and China in general, go and see the pandas somewhere, and then go to Shanghai to see the technology, go to Beijing, see the capital. But then, and I didn't want that to happen. But then I realized when people visit after the Olympics, when things have gone back to normal, I think that'll be even more eye-opening. When they get to the boarding, the arrivals gate at Beijing Airport, and they don't have an Olympic accreditation, and there isn't an Olympic lane, and everything about their passport is scrutinized. When they get into the cities, and who they can talk to when they get out into the rural areas, and who they can talk to and who they can't talk to is being watched by some, local constabulary. I think it'll be even more illuminating, and perhaps work in the favor of people who want change.
Do you think there is hope for change?
Is there hope for change? Not quick. I can't remember who it was. Somebody said that a human mind, once stretched, never regains its original shape. And when you look at Beijing, because it's so huge, you can't necessarily say that this effect will spin throughout China, but there were people there who had their eyes opened. Chinese people, ordinary Chinese people, had their eyes opened to possibilities, ideas of freedom, things on the internet that they could access that they couldn't before, people that they could talk to that otherwise they might not have been able to had the Olympics not been there. The government of China has kind of opened the window to what's possible to the people of China. And when they try and close it again, I think people will resist that.